call this meeting to order, January 21st, 2020. Wow. Executive session is at 6:30.
I'll read the opening statement. Let the minutes reflect that adequate notice of the holding of this regular meeting of the Howell Township Council was provided for in the following manner. By the posting of a copy of said notice upon the bulletin board in the Township Municipal Building on January 8th, 2020. By the emailing of a copy of said notice to the Asbury Park Press, Tri-Town News, and Star Ledger for information and publication on January 8th, 2020. By the filing of a copy of said form of notice in the Township Clerk's Office on January 8th, 2020. The public will be allowed to attend and will be allowed to participate pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. The public is reminded that civility and decorum will be maintained during the meeting. Any contracts awarded at this meeting or between now and the next meeting will be required to comply with the requirements of Public Law 1975, Chapter 127, NJAC 17:27. In accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, be advised that this facility is designed with emergency exits for your safety. Upon exiting the meeting room, they are to your left and to the right. Furthermore, smoking is not permitted in the municipal building. Please take note that this meeting is being videotaped for possible future broadcast on Howell Television. Roll call, Mr. Bonovich.
Present.
Ms. Richmond.
Here.
Mr. Russo.
Here.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell.
Here.
Mayor Berger.
Present. Is there any reason to go in executive session this evening?
Yes, there is, Mayor. We have a couple items to discuss tonight, potential litigation involving the Kalel matter, contract negotiations related to land acquisitions, and finally, personnel matters.
Okay. Thank you. The executive session,
I'll read the
Go ahead.
executive session resolution. Whereas the governing body of the Township of Howell is authorized pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12 to exclude the public from that portion of this meeting for purposes of discussing specific matters as permitted by NJSA 10:4-12. And whereas the governing body of the Township of Howell intends to discuss certain matters which are deemed confidential pursuant to NJSA 10:4-12 in executive session. Whereas at this time, the governing body of the Township of Howell cannot determine the time when the discussion to be held in executive session will be made public, but will disclose the minutes of the executive session when the need for confidentiality no longer exists. Now therefore be it resolved by the governing body of the Township of Howell that this meeting shall be adjourned to an executive session and the public will be excluded in order that the governing body of the Township of Howell may discuss the items previously listed, and upon reconvening this public meeting, the presiding officer will announce, if possible, the time when and the circumstances under which the discussion conducted in executive session will be disclosed to the public. We need a motion and second.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
I'll second.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich.
Yes.
Ms. Richmond.
Yes.
Mr. Russo.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell.
Yes.
Mayor Berger.
yes. Good evening, everyone. It is Tuesday, January 21st, 2020, and unfortunately, I'm sorry we were a couple of minutes late at 7:42. The executive session minutes from tonight's meeting can be disclosed to the public when the need for confidentiality no longer exists. I would like to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So there are no minutes to approve?
Nope.
Okay. Do we have any reports from my team?
Yes, Mayor. Actually, tonight we have Assemblyman Sean Keane here to present Officer Jonathan Woolley and Amy Greenberger with a proclamation for a recent life-saving episode. So I'd like Assemblyman Keane to come up to the podium here and take it away. You're very welcome.
May we join you?
Please, come on down. Counselor? Jeff?
spin it around.
Oh, okay. So thank you, Mayor, and members of the governing body for inviting me here this evening. I thought it was appropriate to recognize a few individuals who just did a tremendous effort to help people in the community. Without them being present, just by chance or by God's will, they were there to perform vital life-saving function. I know that Officer Woolley and Amy Greenberger, who are here, I would ask them to please come up for a moment. And, you know, especially in light of some of the things that you heard in the media in the last couple of days about one of the stores in town where some epithets were said about law enforcement. I mean, I think, Amy, you used to be in law enforcement, right?
Yes.
And certainly I know Officer Woolley through some of my role as a municipal prosecutor, outstanding individual and somebody who gives so much to the community. And for all of Howell's finest, I think this is a tribute to them. And I just wanted to be here with the governing body. If I could just read part of the resolution. These look pretty good on the bar in the basement or in your office, these resolutions. But this resolution, and we have one for Amy and one for Officer Woolley, both of these resolutions were passed unanimously by the New Jersey State Senate as well as the Assembly, signed by Senate President Steve Sweeney and Speaker of the General Assembly, Craig Coughlin. And I just wanted to read a few lines. Whereas the Senate and General Assembly of the State of New Jersey are pleased to acknowledge Jonathan Woolley and Amy Greenberger, highly esteemed residents of the Garden State, for the integral role they played during a life-threatening emergency at a fitness facility. And whereas, on the morning of December 18th, 2019, while exercising at a gym in Brick Township, off-duty Howell Police Officer Jonathan Woolley noticed a fellow fitness enthusiast collapse to the floor. And whereas, without hesitation, Officer Woolley sprang into action by first assessing the 85-year-old man's condition, which was grave, as he was not breathing, turning blue, and without a pulse. And by then, Amy Greenberger, I just found out, was not even working. She was there in her private role. She works at the gym, but she was there working out. Amy Greenberger, a personal trainer at the gym and former police officer, had rushed over to help, and together they began performing CPR. And with that, you know, the Howell Township Police Chief, Chief Kudrick, got involved, and it was a group effort, and because of their fine efforts, they saved the life of somebody who wouldn't be here otherwise. And I would just ask if everybody could please give them a round of applause. Present the resolution. Could you guys come down? Amy, this one's for you. If we could. We're gonna have to fix that. So if we could ask everybody to a photo here. Great.
You guys want to do one with the family? You guys want your families to join you?
We have two proclamations.
You have one time?
Pam,
Oh, great.
do a picture with the families and the council and everybody.
There's two other proclamations.
Thank you, Mayor. Like the mayor said, we have two proclamations Councilman Bonifich and I are going to read. The first one for Amy Greenberger, retired police officer and personal trainer. I was a personal trainer back in the day also. Whereas on the morning of December 18, 2019, Amy Greenberger, personal trainer at Tilton Fitness in Brick, and off-duty police officer Jonathan Woolley noticed an individual collapse while exercising. And whereas Ms. Greenberger, accompanied by Officer Woolley, immediately commenced CPR until the Brick paramedics, EMS, and police arrived. And whereas due to the quick, responsive life-saving efforts by Ms. Greenberger and Officer Woolley, the 85-year-old patient is doing well. And whereas retired Jackson police officer and graduate Rutgers University with a degree in exercise science and sports studies, Ms. Greenberger is employed by Tilton Fitness Brick as personal trainer. I hope they give you a raise. And whereas Ms. Greenberger is quoted, and I quote, "Encourage everyone to sign up for CPR classes because you never know when your training will be put into action to save a life." Now, therefore, Mayor Berger and the council give this proclamation on behalf of the governing body with sincere appreciation for retired police officer and personal trainer Amy Greenberger for her extraordinary life-saving efforts to assist fellow citizens. Thank you so much, Amy.
This proclamation is for Officer Jonathan Woolley, Howell Township Police Department. Whereas while exercising at the gym on the morning of December 18, 2019, off-duty police officer Jonathan Woolley noticed an individual collapse. And whereas Officer Woolley, accompanied by retired police officer and personal trainer Amy Greenberger, immediately commenced CPR until the BRIC paramedics, EMS, and police arrived. And whereas due to the quick, responsive, life-saving efforts by Officer Woolley and Mrs. Greenberger, the 85-year-old patient is doing well. And whereas the 15-year-old veteran, Officer Woolley, works in the Howell Police Department's Professional Development Group training and is a motorcycle officer who is also a member of the Monmouth County Emergency Response Team, SWAT. And whereas Chief Kudrick has been quoted, "This is another example how police officers are always on duty and always ready to help those in need of assistance. Now, therefore, Mayor Teresa Berger and the Howell Township Council make this proclamation on behalf of the Township Council with sincere appreciation for the police officer Jonathan Woolley for his extraordinary life-saving efforts and his dedication to all fellow citizens."
Everybody, get in there.
Congratulations.
Officer, good job. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Oh my God, it's adorable. Are we ready?
Yes, Mayor, we have one other report to township officials from Allison.
There are just a couple of items removed from the agenda. They are resolutions. R 2084, item 9A11, authorize award of professional services contract 2020, capital program number 2, developments, CME Associates, $39,400. Resolution R 2085, item 9A12, authorize award of professional services contract 2020, capital program number 3, various outroads, T&M Associates, $64,800. And Resolution R 2086, item 9A13, authorize award of professional services contract 2020, capital program number 4, NJAW roadway improvements, T&M Associates, $71,600.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mayor? I was wondering, Mr. Herman, can we get a final report in as much as our shared services with the county on the trees that were either trimmed or cut?
This goes back to the 2018 hazardous tree removal?
Yes.
Okay. We completed that work with Monmouth County. We talked about going outside, utilizing tree companies, also potentially trying to save some money using a shared service with the county. So we were able to do that. We met with county officials at the time, and their shade tree employees were able to inspect the trees and then also follow up and remove the trees. They did them basically around the county reservoir. So on Windler, Georgia Tavern, Peskin, Southard, and Manassas. Some of those were county roads, so some of that work was done at the county's cost. Other roads were township roads, and they performed the work for us. So in total, we spent just shy of $27,000 in tree removal costs from the county, and that included the labor, equipment, fuel, the costs for administrative fees, and for the tree inventory, which was just shy of $2,000 for the inventory to go out and inspect all the trees and review them for which ones needed to be trimmed and which ones needed to be removed. So that was completed in 2019.
Right. And although I'm very happy that we're able to do a shared service, and hopefully we save some money around that particular area, but as we all know, there's a lot of hazardous trees in Howell Township just by sheer value of our size. So Shade Tree obviously has a fund. I was wondering, I'd like you and Brian to sit down, I'm sorry, you and the manager, Mr. Geegan, to sit down and try to work up a plan on how much money we can allot from Shade Tree to remove dangerous trees. In all honesty, we have trees, especially the locust trees, that as you drive down the road, there's sort of a canopy over your car. And especially after a lot of rain, I must admit that I'm happy when I'm through that area. It's a little shady, a little dangerous looking. So could you and Mr. Geegan sit down and find a way, or determine how much you could allocate from the Shade Tree Fund toward dangerous trees?
Yes, we can do that.
And I realize that we probably could spend millions in Howell for this project.
Sure we
But
could.
maybe we could come up with a 3-year plan, a certain amount of money each year for a 3-year period, or at least have those guidelines, some kind of a goal in mind. I would appreciate that.
Would it be utilizing shared services, utilizing our own forces,
I would
or
think
contracting?
the county is very, very particular on what they use as guidelines for tree removal. When I see a tree, basically growing out of the ground, in my unprofessional opinion, I think that tree should be removed because most of the tree is uprooted anyway. They tend to trim. That's how I viewed some of this. So I think possibly we're going to go out to other professional services because they would have the kind of equipment that could take down like a 100-foot tree if need be. Because I
Correct.
don't think we can't accommodate that kind of workload.
Right, and the county also would not trim any trees around wires. So if there's anything around the wires, they do not want the liability of trimming anything around there, so they will punt on that one and ask you to hire a professional tree service.
And I'm very unimpressed when JCP&L, cuts the middle of the tree out and leaves, the remaining over the road and over the property. I'm not sure exactly
So,
what that process thought is.
well, there's only a certain amount they're allowed to under their BPU regulations.
That's unfortunate.
I agree. And they also, recently, in the last few years, they created a new program through the BPU that allows them to cut down what they term as hazardous trees beyond the initial, we'll call it 10-foot envelope around their wires that are technically on private property. So if you remember last year, we received numerous complaints from Equestra about their power going out.
Yes.
And they typically blamed it all on us. We explained to them and brought JCP&L to their facility for a meeting, which I attended, and we went and explained, and JCP&L explained the process that it goes through and what it takes to trim a tree that's on private property. Private property is, the ones that are not in the township right-of-way that they're already cutting or allowed to cut by the BPU. So what they've done is they've contacted these property owners, and they've asked them permission to go on their property and remove the tree free of charge, utilizing a BPU grant. At the time we had the meeting with Equestra, they mentioned their success rate was about 60 to 65%, meaning that that's how many people out of 100 would allow them onto their property to remove the trees. The rest were still not. Recently, they made a concerted effort to go back on Yellowbrook Road And if you've been up Yellowbrook Road recently, you'll notice they trimmed a tremendous amount more
I
of the
have seen that,
trees
yes.
on the northbound lane, which were, which caused, I believe, 9 out of the 11 outages that happened in Equestria over the last year period. So I think they've done a decent job in going beyond what they originally were supposed to do there, but could that happen everywhere? Sure. But they only have grant money for certain streets. So they put in a grant, they ask for certain streets, they do those certain streets, they get permission from the owners, and they trim those trees, or even cut them down. So we can also talk to their leadership team and discuss that, and Howell saying we'd be open to you doing this on more streets to help, A, keep the power on, and B, potentially remove more hazardous trees.
That's great, and I hope that they continue to be ambitious. And in terms of the shade tree, I was talking to Councilman Bonovich today, and we spoke about the possibility of changing the guidelines, the ordinance for the trees. When a project comes in, they a certain amount for each tree. Then we have a formula in place that after it exceeds a certain amount of area or trees, there's a formula that's given to the applicant, which in effect is a reduced amount. So we would like to readdress that ordinance and possibly look at a tree per tree and not have the position or the possibility in place for developments to actually get a break on tree removal. So, we'd like to look at that again. And the other thing I'd like to ask.
Evelyn, may I?
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Basically, Evelyn and I were chatting, the mayor and I sat in with Shade Tree, and, the Shade Tree's always asked, we have problems with the ash trees and all these costs. And Evelyn just brought up how much it costs to trim the trees and the locust trees and all that. Well, the tree ordinance is 15 years old, and costs change. 15 years ago, the labor was such a rate. And to replace a tree, if you go to, Twin Palm Farm and you see what the cost of a tree is, things have adjusted a lot in 15 years. So that's something we should address as well. Maybe we could have Shari come in from CME to look at and say, all right, 15 years ago, the price was X, now it's this. And adjust that, because this is a big task and it's going to cost us a lot of money. So, if these developers are looking that way to, all right, I don't want to replant, I want to put into a fund, the money is, it's 15 years outdated. So if we could look at that as well.
Sure.
Okay.
And the other issue I wanted to ask, Mr. Clark, what's the closing date look like on the McKenzie House? Do we have a ballpark on that yet, or?
We don't have an exact date scheduled, but I would say within the next 2 weeks.
Very good news. And I have several things, but lastly, I'd just like to ask that we take a very hard look at the ESIP program. I know that the school district did in terms of trying to save some energy costs in the township, and I'd like to look at that program. We have a lot of buildings in Howell, and I'm hopeful that we can come up with a program that will help lessen our energy cost. So if we could start delving into that and see if we have a possibility on looking at some of our buildings, and maybe we can join in the program. If the school district did it, they obviously think they're saving money. I think that's a good marker for us to say that this is certainly something that we too should be looking at. They may have more buildings than we do, but that doesn't lessen the idea that any cost savings would be appreciated. So if we could just look into that at this point, I would appreciate that.
I wanted to just put on the record that the transfer station meeting was at the county level. They said that they have a preliminary report of the traffic study, but they were not yet ready to share that information with anyone. I think it's important, though, that if anybody wants that information, they really should start asking for it. So,
That information would be with SWAC, correct?
yeah, yes.
Mayor, I have one more thing.
Sure.
I'm sure everybody's heard about the incident of Five Guys.
Yes.
I For those of you who don't know, one of the employees called one of our police officers a very bad name. The employee was immediately terminated. Our police, and Chief Kudrick, handled it perfectly with class. Actually, there's going to be an event, I think tomorrow, at Five Guys, where 100% of the proceeds will go to the PAL. So I encourage you all to, I'm sorry? PBA. Will go to the PBA. I encourage everybody to go. It is tomorrow, right? Yes. Go tomorrow, 100% of the proceeds, PBA. I'll be there, I'm sure.
Do you want to give all the information out, the time?
5 to 7 p.m. That's all I know, but I did want to recognize our police and how they always handle things with class, and particularly this was no different, and I thank them for that.
Excellent.
May I?
Go
You
ahead.
done, Ed? Are you done, Deputy Mayor?
I'll wait till
right.
you're done.
Okay, okay.
Let her go.
Thank you. Mr. Herman, do you have an update on the park improvement plan that we've been working on?
Yes, so Councilman Bonovich and, for everyone's edification, Councilwoman Richmond and I have been going back and forth on park improvement plans over about the last 2 months, and we have shortlisted a bunch of improvements in various parks around the area. There are some, we'll call it easy, low-hanging fruit items, and there are some larger, complicated items that we seem to have agreed on need to be done and completed. So what we're going to do is I'm going to obtain pricing for the low-hanging fruit items. Those are mainly playgrounds and swings and repairs, some minor fencing work, things of that nature that can be done relatively quickly through one of our co-ops. We have, we're able to purchase equipment and install it under some of our co-ops that we're members of. So we will look to do that. I hope to have a resolution ready for you at the next council meeting based on our recent discussions, and go over all the details at that time. Those are, like I said, various park improvements, playgrounds mainly, bleachers, things of that nature.
Do you have a time frame?
I'm being told by the manufacturers right now it would be a 3 to 4 week lead time on purchasing equipment to delivery. And then the contractor would also have to get it into his schedule, so it would also be a few weeks. So, within, we'll call it 3 months to be safe, if from the time of resolution to the time of installation would probably be a reasonable time frame. And then, we can remove some old equipment, replace some old equipment that was removed previously and never replaced. There's been quite a few years of hard times on the parks, and not a whole lot of money spent on redoing them or improving them. We've been concentrating on trying to acquire property over the last few years, which we are currently, as you know, under contract on 4 different properties in town that we are utilizing open space trust funds to acquire, as well as some grant funding that we have. So we're diligently working on that, and we're also going to present to you shortly, hopefully, I don't know if it's going to be by the next meeting or not, but an outline of all the additional improvements we would like to do based on our discussions that we've had. These are also based on the master plan, basically shortlisting items off the master plan, and then coming up with ideas. I've spoken to some of the leagues, not all of them. I will be speaking to hopefully all of the leagues that do lease our fields and our parks to get their wish lists. We will compare the wish lists to what we think are reasonable, and then we will make a decision and move on. Some of the items like parking lot paving or field rehabilitation might take longer because they're going to require survey and permitting and design plans and, contract bidding, public bidding, the whole nine. So they're going to take a little while longer. But we want to get moving on something, so.
Excuse me, may I ask, the monies is coming from a open space to do these projects?
So all the proposed improvements right now would be taken out of the Open Space Trust Fund, which I believe right now there's about 4.1 million in. Keep in mind, we're also paying for the money for the acquisitions out of that. Any park improvements we do, the multi-use building at Soldier Memorial that's proposed, And I think that's it right now. So those items are all going to be taken out of that trust fund.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Excuse me, Mayor, may I? Just in way of information, I'd like to extend condolences to the Herbert Massa family. As many of you probably have heard, Herbert C. Massa was a multi-decade employee of the township, the Board of Education. He was their business administrator and assistant superintendent, and the family lost him, I believe, 2 days ago. There will be a viewing service Thursday evening from 4 to 8 at Clayton and McGurth's Funeral Home for all those that wish to pay their respects.
Thank you for that. Okay. At this time, I would like to open this portion of the meeting to the hearing of citizens. Adam Hatron.
I don't know. Maybe she's not well.
Yeah, this is still weird. My name is Adam Hockren. I live on Pine Tree Court. Before I get started, I don't know if you guys know, but as I was coming down, multiple emergency vehicles were going up Route 9. There was apparently a house fire. Hopefully everybody's okay. I haven't heard anything, but fingers crossed. Also tonight, there may be a smaller crowd because there's a parent academy or parent university the schools are doing, which is just another great thing that happens in Howell. It was about 9 years ago that I covered my first meeting at the old town hall, where I figured out you could sit in the back of the room and the seats vibrated, so you got a massage while you were covering the meetings. So that was fun. And when I pulled onto Robert Walsh Way, I had to smile because I was there when, this whole plan came together. And people on both sides were very angry. Some people loved it, some people hated it. Here we are. Now the PAL's here, school board's here. Whatever he was thinking seems to have worked out. My smile faded a little when I realized that Don Smith and his Mustang that I was so used to seeing when I came to meetings wasn't going to be here. Clearly, things have changed in 9 years. Mayor Berger, the reason I'm here is you've been in office for 3 years now, I think. You and Deputy Mayor O'Donnell are up for election this year, Democrat and Republican. Being a bipartisan council, not a new concept at this point. My hope is that in a year where the national election will probably be as bipartisan and dirty and nasty and ugly as we've ever seen, that doesn't come here. There's no need for it. Whatever happens in DC, even what happens in Trenton, where Democrats and Republicans and Democrats don't get along, that doesn't have to affect what happens in this building. Lakewood doesn't have to be a four-letter word in this election. That's my hope. My other hope is that, I have an hour-and-a-half commute on the bus to the city every day, which gives me a lot of time. So on that hour-and-a-half commute today, I went on the township Facebook page. What I found on the township Facebook page was that the phrase mayor and council appears once, one time, and not from anybody here. You guys recognize the Howell Fire Bureau, and they posted a picture where they thanked the mayor and council for recognizing them. This is not a new concept, being a bipartisan council. You have opportunities where, from the outside sitting over there, you all seem to get along. You all seem to like each other. I've seen Councilman Russo, Councilman Bonevich, Councilman Richmond. They're all very good at using social media. They're all very good at promoting what the Democrats are doing. They're all very good at promoting what the Republicans are doing. There's good things happening that don't have to have partisan leanings either way. I think there are ways that you can work together to say, okay, this is what's going on in town, and this is what's good, and this is what's, what we're working on. There used to be, and I guess the manager isn't here, there used to be a monthly or a quarterly newsletter, and that would have a message from the mayor, a message from the manager, just saying, hey, this is what I'm thinking about now. Even if it's something small, like, leaf pickup or snow cleanup or whatever you got to do. I think that's a helpful thing to have. And I asked somebody why that doesn't happen anymore, and I was told that, we have all the information on Facebook. What do we need that for? I think it's good to put a face to things, put a name to things. You have things on Facebook where you promote the Easter egg hunt, you promote whatever, but there's no, the mayor and council invite you too. Mayor Berger, when I was at the 9/11 ceremony, you gave one of the most touching talks I've heard in ever, because that's something that affected not just you, affected everybody here. I think that's something that you can work on, and I think, I've mentioned before that I'm happy to help, but I think you guys know what you're doing, and I'd like to see. Yeah, I've lived in Howell for 12 years. I'm very proud to say I live in Howell, and I think you guys all do an amazing job, and I think you all have good intentions. And one of the posts I saw was pictures from Student Government Day. And that was always one of my favorite events to cover, because it was kids coming, sitting up there, imagining they're the mayor, deputy mayor, council members, having a blast. I don't think, I'd like to imagine that when you had Student Government Day, party politics didn't come up, because it doesn't have to. So I think, we had a bye year this year with the elections. We don't have that this year. This could get bad. I'd like to see, I believe in you, and I think the residents of Howell, whether they're Democrats or Republicans, just want to see the best from their government. That's really all I came to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joan Osborne?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Joan Osborne, 28 Bronia Street, Howell. I just wanted to let you all know, although we haven't gotten the final grant, that we were notified that we did receive the Sustainable Jersey and Nature Conservancy grant to plant 700 trees in Winston Park. So I'm alerting you to that. I'm alerting anyone who may be watching that we are going to need groups that want to come out in April and help us plant these trees and put the protective stake and sleeve around them so that they survive the deer and the goose that are currently fouling Winston Park, and hopefully that will improve it greatly.
Joan, are you going to contact Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts?
Yes, they have, previous to the application being submitted for the grant, we got some commitment on the part of the Middle School South people, Aldrich School, Boy Scouts, people involved in Shade Tree and in the lake restoration. And so we have some people lined up, but, any groups out there where I know that kids that are receiving confirmation need community service hours, people in National Honor Society need community service hours, so we welcome. And we're hoping that the town can create an event. This is going to be the 100th anniversary of celebrating Arbor Day. So we want to plant these trees in April and make it a townwide event on a Saturday or a Sunday to get this done. So
Or is there a contact information that they can, or
they
an
can
email?
contact the township. They can contact me at, and I hesitate to give my work email, but.
Well, do you have all the final information?
No,
Like
we're
the
getting-
date and the where and everything else?
It's going to be mid-April, around the 15th, either the weekend before or the weekend after, so we haven't set it up as a final date yet.
So that I would refrain from putting a date until you have a final date,
Okay,
right? You
Yeah,
don't want to
well, we'll
post
have-
the date and not have a real date. You want,
right.
Yeah.
We'll put information after we get the grant and we see, and we can definitely sign off on it, which I'll need our attorney to look at once I receive it on Friday. So, and then I just wanted to alert everyone that that's coming.
I think that's fabulous
Nicely
idea.
done, Joan, nicely done.
Good job, John.
The second thing I wanted to talk about was the plastic bag ordinance. I know that several of the council members have met with students at middle schools who are very interested in passing an ordinance at a local level. Recently, the state has considered passing it. It passed at the Senate level. It did not pass at the Assembly level. So ANJAC is again asking that individual towns pass ordinances to increase the pressure to create a statewide solution on plastic bags. Our students at the middle school submitted, and I think it was sent to everyone, a video, an educational video that they would like Howell Township to run. It's a very nicely done 30-second spot, and I would ask that you consider putting it on the TV station and possibly a link to it on the website so that we can educate the community on why we need to go this way.
Excuse me.
Yeah,
Joan,
I thought that was done.
is Miss G, Miss Chanel's the one that did, all right, because I
Yes.
never saw the video, so I'll email
It's
her
very
and ask her to
nice,
send
very
it to me.
good.
I never saw
Great.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I never saw it.
Yeah, I thought she sent it to all the council
I never
members.
saw it.
She
I
did.
can forward it
She
on to
did?
you.
It was in a Dropbox folder. It was a link. Yeah.
Okay.
It's great.
Excuse me, Mr. Herman? Just on that note, Joan, if I could just take a moment of your time, in terms of getting the commercial on our website, that should be a relatively simple task, right? Just call,
Do we need
IT
any
people?
release or anything like that? Because there's children in it, Joe?
I think, yeah, Ms. Gianellis already has one through
I
the
thought she
school.
did.
I think she mentioned that she has them. I'll take a look at them, and if there's any concerns, then we'll just.
Very well
we'll
done.
figure it out on our end.
Do we need to do a motion on that, or do we need to?
No, we can do a straw poll, and if everybody favors posting it, we'll figure out a way to get it up there right away as soon as I can take a look at the waivers.
I'm good.
I'm in.
yes?
Thank you.
I thought-
The building that's the subject of an ordinance tonight, the concession stand in Soldier Memorial Park, I just would like to, and I don't know if the plans are done yet. I know that we hired an architecture firm, Sedembrino Architects, that is a LEED certified firm, which means that they specialize in creating buildings that are sustainable, energy efficient, and I hope they've incorporated that into this building. The township should be a leader in showing the community how to build sustainably. It's a new building. There's really no excuse for not having the most up-to-date systems in it that will be efficient and sustainable. And in regard to that, I'm hoping that there's a water bottle filling station. I'm hoping that we can put some solar panels out there. Before this application is completed and goes out to bid, I would hope that those things are incorporated. And the last thing that I want to say is on warehouses and zoning, to remind you that, every month I have a new application on the Environmental Commission for another warehouse, and I don't want to see Howell turn into a place that's just got trucks on every single road because there are warehouses everywhere. So please, encourage the planning board to do something about the zoning and rein in where we can put warehouses.
How many have you gotten?
Oh, in the last year, probably 5 or 6, and, starting this year, we've gotten another one, maybe 2 already this year. So, thank you.
Thank you. Tina Smilek? No, she's not here. I hope she's all right. She's been very ill. Barbara.
Tina Smilek, 33 Charles Street, Howell. First, I want to say thank you, Mayor, for going to the SWAC meeting. It meant a lot to our residents. It came up last minute. I want to say, is there any way that we have new freeholders on the board, that a unified council can get up and send another letter to the freeholders, since there's some new people there? And can we, once again, tell them that we're opposed to this going in there? I mean, a letter from you, a new year, let's get a new letter. Can we do that?
I have no problem doing it.
Something we can,
Sure, I can look into it. We'll see
I
if
know you
there's
did
any
it
new
last year.
information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
If
have
there's
our
any new information, we can incorporate.
And we had our resolution opposing last year as
Right.
well.
Yeah, just
We can do all that,
reiterating
right?
for all the new members so they're brought up to date.
yep.
We've also asked for the traffic report to be sent to us once it's completed from solid waste. So we have not received that yet. I know you guys had asked last week, but we have not. So I don't believe it's been released to anyone yet.
And I did check with the freeholders. They also have not received that traffic report. So I've been in touch consistently to ensure that when that report is released,
Perfect.
we have it.
Thank you. I have packets for you guys. Can I give them to the clerk to give to you?
Yes.
And the managers I'll give to you. I guess.
Ooh, presents. Am I allowed to open it? It's got my name on it. All right.
It's not federal.
As you may know, last meeting, I brought up about the state of the town address.
Yes.
So This is just some talking points that I wanted to reiterate. A little pamphlet in there. If you look in the pamphlet, you're going to see a page that contains both the OMCL, optional municipal charter law, that says that we shall have the state of benefit done by the manager, and also our township code says that we should have a state of address to the town for the public and you, so we're all on the same page. Just an update every year. Also included in that packet, the last presentation was done in January 2006 by Manager Mayfield, so it hasn't been done for a while. So, yeah, there's a PowerPoint slide that he did, plus his presentation that he did. It might give our manager some direction on how to do it, which way to go. Just a little feedback for you. I would really like to see this come to fruition, hopefully next month, because he did, it's usually done in January. It updates every department in here. It's something that you should know. He runs the town every day, and this just gives you an overview, and it's good for residents, it's good for you. No harm, no foul there. So that's just a little reading for you, if you'd like it. All right. So, on to tonight's agenda. Okay. 9A-8. Not 8, 9A-9. The light on Fort Plains and Holsell's Corner Road. What was the reason that had to have an emergency resolution? Was that because of the sewers, or is that?
No, this has nothing to do with sewer. This is the blinking light that's at Hulse's Corner in Fort Plains. The unit is so old that the sag in the cable has caused it to get struck numerous times by every tractor trailer that goes through there. So anytime a truck goes through, it gets smashed. We're to the point now we cannot get replacement parts. So we're literally cannibalizing any electrician that has an old light that they took down, trying to cannibalize their parts from them and get them to just repair it.
And that's ours?
And it's ours. So all we're going to do here is set a new pole, put a new cable in that's not 60 years old that we can actually tighten and raise up a new flashing signal.
And wait for the next person to hit it.
Well, we're
Just like
going to raise it
Home
higher
Depot.
than that.
The one at Home Depot.
Well, that
gets
you
hit.
you can't stop.
Okay. The shared service with Farmingdale. I know I'm a pain when it comes to this. We're getting $10,000, and is that all we're getting, plus they're paying any fees for security and?
Right, we're getting the $10,000 plus we anticipate doing a true-up at the end of the year that may cover any costs that exceed that $10,000. And then they're also responsible for their own costs involved with, say, their own judge, their own prosecutor, defender, security, transport of prisoners. If for some reason their session of court goes overtime, they're going to have to pay the overtime fees. So we're going to be responsible for some of the administrative work that was done by their retiring clerk, but they're going to be footing the bill for a lot of any of the extras like that.
Okay, and then they get access to our venue, which still needs work, right? We still need work over in that area?
In the court itself, I don't know about that.
How much money are they saving?
They're saving approximately that because their court administrator wasn't a full-time court administrator, so, back of the envelope calculation was about $15,000 in services a year that she was devoting to their court.
Okay, so it's not going to be a big project for our court, because I know our court on the budget, we get a lot of overtime with this bail reform and everything else that goes into there, and, our staff.
No,
Is
it
it gonna
shouldn't be, and,
inundate them?
we've kind of got our predictions in place, and if real-world experience shows otherwise, we have a 30-day termination, and so there's plenty of protection baked in just in
It'd be
case.
better to do this as a one-year contract instead of a two-year contract?
The Shared Services Act requires a minimum 2 year.
2 years?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we're not hiring any new staff to cover it. It's all within the capacity we currently have.
Are you going to give increases to the employees that are taking on more responsibility?
That's a conversation for the manager.
Okay. The building over at the 1.2, that started at 750. I know I'm not allowed to ask questions because it's not on the ordinance. That'll be the next as public open. But 1.2 million, it started at 750. That's a huge jump. Background is, are they paying anything towards it, or is the organizations paying anything towards it? Do they agree with this? Has there been a meeting with the organizations? And who's going to utilize the concession stand, softball or soccer? And when they utilize that, are they going to be paying a lease to use that because we're going to own the building? Are we going to make any money off of this to pay for this? There's a lot more into this, and on top of that, you have a Little League building still from 2006 that was started and not completed. I mean, now are we going to have Little League coming to us saying, hey, you're spending 1.2 million on these two clubs, what about us? And we got Little League North, Little League South. I mean, where does this end? I don't think this is something that should be discussed tonight or voted on tonight. I think there's a lot that needs to go into it. I also would like to see for the public, the plans. I think we should be able to see them. I mean, how many bathrooms are we getting? How many, there's a lot of questions here that I have. And I know this is only the first reading of it, but I know, I'm not expecting answers today because I know it's not an ordinance review, but this is just, if you don't have answers to these for yourselves, I wouldn't vote on something that, are we making anything off of it? Who's paying for this? 1.2, you get a 20%, somebody comes in and they want to go over budget. You have up to 20%. We can go up to 1.5 million on this building. I think we need to put a cap on this. I think 1.2 million is ridiculous. I do understand we need bathrooms over there. I understand we need facilities over there. But 1.2 million, people could build a mansion in Howell for 1.2 million, and then here we are. So I just think this is a lot of money to be spending, and I really would like to see that you guys really done your research on it, and that you know what's coming in, what the expectations are from the clubs on this. Are they going to pay any leases for utilizing the concession stands? Is there a player room in there? How many bathrooms is there in there? Does this include, soup, nuts, and everything? And what exactly is the difference between 750, which you already approved, and now coming back and asking for 1.2 million? And I don't begrudge these outside organizations anything. They're, but we just have to be responsible for what money we're spending. So, all right.
Jim, do you want to talk about the increase? Why the increase?
If you want me to go through, I'm pretty sure we have answers to just about all those questions.
Well,
Or do we want to table it so that we can?
I think we're going to table this and discuss it at another time.
Yeah.
We have a lot of things we need to work out, so
Absolutely.
Ms. Smilek, everything you said, we discussed.
we
We
have
have lots of
discussed.
questions.
We
I'm
do.
very happy to hear that.
So we are collectively, we are tabling it, so we can hold off
Join
on
your
that. Jim.
Which is why it was tabled, obviously, for further information.
Yeah.
Great, that's perfect. And I have to agree with Mr. Hochran, too. I hope this year is a nice, smooth year, less on the hard side, more on the unified side, and please look at the political sign ordinance, and let's do something with that if we could. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Parisi?
Good evening, Mark Parisi, Two Castle Court.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm here tonight to talk about the proposed repeal and adoption of the noise ordinance. I guess you guys aren't surprised noise is on the agenda and I'm up here.
Nope.
So just a little background. Yeah, what's all the noise about, right? So I have a lot of information here, and I want to, address this with the council. I have real concerns about the introduction of this proposed ordinance tonight and whether or not it's lawful, and I'll get to that. But just by way of background, since 1978 to 2017, before this council adopted the model noise ordinance, we had a local ordinance on the books that was enforceable through the township by our code enforcement that had a plainly audible provision, and we had no problem with the enforcement of that ordinance. I would suggest that maybe as an alternative to adopting the state code as a local ordinance, that we would consider going back and adopting our prior ordinance prior to 2017. That's number one. And there also, in that ordinance, it had a whole like preamble that talked about the health and welfare of the public that's absent in the proposed ordinance tonight. So what happened? In 2017, the then Deputy Mayor Nick Castro decided that it would be best if the township adopted the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's model noise ordinance that was introduced in September and adopted on its first reading in October of 2017. At that time, Nick Castro said that this ordinance is now consistent with the NJDEP state law requirements. And in the ordinance itself, when it was adopted, it said that the mayor and council for the township find that it is in the best interest of the township to adopt the NJDEP model noise ordinance. Okay? After that was adopted, unfortunately, there was some hiccups and it wasn't sent to the DEP to get approved until February of 2018. And it was then approved by the DEP, but then the town struggled to find a mechanism to enforce the ordinance. They were supposed to have an NCO, a noise control officer, which was trained and certified to enforce the noise ordinance, but for some reason, the township never sent anybody to get trained or certified or buy a sound meter, and they were unable to enter into a shared services agreement with the county or any adjacent municipality to enforce the noise ordinance. This went on for years. Okay, up to present. And many of you know that I've been here before you asking for a resolution to this situation. We've gotten nowhere, okay? So then in January of 2019, I sent an email correspondence to our township manager, Mr. Clark, Mr. Herman, and Mr. Howard regarding the issue, and I got a response back from Mr. Howard on January 16, 2019, that said that we are currently in the process of finalizing our shared service agreement with Monmouth County for 2019, and we expect this to be completed sometime in February. So that leads me to believe that there was an ongoing discussion with the county health department that they were going to enter into a shared service agreement and that it was in its final stages of an agreement. Don't know why that fell apart. But I think that the council should try to find out why that fell apart. We pay a lot of taxes to the Monmouth County Health Department. They should probably be entering into a shared services agreement with us to enforce our local noise ordinance. So then nothing happened. Still nothing happened. And in August, I came before you and I asked, what's going on with this? And at that time, the Deputy Mayor O'Donnell said that she asked Mr. Herman to please follow up with this and let's get this wrapped up. Because it's been a while now. It's been since October 2017. And I appreciate you asking the professionals to do that. Sometime after that, I reached out to Mr. Clark, and he said, listen, let's sit down and talk about this. And he was very pleasant, and we met, and we talked about solutions. Let's come up with a solution, because there was a couple different ways that we could resolve the issue of how do we enforce our noise ordinance that we've now had in the books for nearly 2 years. We bounced around some suggestions of enforcement, and at that time, it was agreed that, let's just enforce it in-house. If the county's going to give us a hard time, let's just pay $1,000. $1,000, folks, to go and send one of our code enforcement officers to a training at the Noise Technical Assistance Center and then buy a sound meter, and we can enforce our ordinance in-house. Seems so simple, right? Okay. Well, thereafter, Mr. Clark responded to me he said, I decided I'm going to change my mind, and I recommend that we just scrap the ordinance altogether and replace it with the state ordinance. So now here we are. Now we have an ordinance that's being introduced tonight, and it's to adopt the state noise code as the local noise ordinance. Well, I have real concerns about this, and I think everyone, the governing body should too, because and I just have a couple questions to ask Mr. Clark. Can I direct those questions to Mr. Clark?
Actually, you have to direct them through me.
Okay.
Excuse
So-
me, Mayor, 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I have just a few more minutes, please?
Yes.
Thank you. So one of the questions that I would like to know is the proposed ordinance to be adopted tonight, has it been modified or amended in any way, or is this the actual ordinance the state ordinance in its entirety?
It's verbatim from the New Jersey Administrative Code at Title 7, Chapter 29, which is what the county has informed us they will enforce.
Okay, I understand that you're taking the county's guidance on this. I spoke to somebody who's on the New Jersey Noise Control Council, and it was informed to me and that within the ordinance that's before you tonight, that it would be unlawful to adopt this ordinance, and I request that you guys table it, and I will.
Mark, I'm going to make you very happy. We're going to make you very happy. This was discussed as well. We're talking with our professionals, and we're talking with code enforcement and our police, and we're going to look out and see what the costs are to enforce it ourselves. So this is going to be tabled. It's
Okay.
tabled.
All right. Well, why didn't you tell me that 6 minutes ago?
You know what? You were on the
5.5.
tear, and you were doing well.
You were doing so well, Mark.
Gosh.
I know how much this means to you. I was like, and I want to hear the story.
And it's
I wanna hear
good
the
for it to
story.
be on the record
Thank
too,
you.
Mark, so.
Well, thank you for giving me that opportunity, but I'm like, I need like water. I'm like, out of breath. Okay. All right. Well, thank you for the time, folks. I appreciate it. And I liked what the first gentleman had to say about working together. I thought that at the reorg, it was a little divisive, and I would like to see everyone work together more. And thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to come up that has not signed the paper?
Kathy Novak, 16 Stratton Drive. Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
I wasn't planning on speaking tonight. I'm very happy to see that those two ordinances are tabled and more thought would be given. A couple of things did come up. I'm very happy that the parks are going to be improved, that they are so needed in Howell. We have beautiful parks. We also have beautiful lakes. And I'm wondering if there has been any thought given to, or talk given to, dredging Lake Louise, or making any improvements around Lake Louise, or...
Jim?
So we looked into dredging Lake Louise 3 years ago now. We got rough cost estimates, rough volumes of material that we had to remove. We did hydro surveys of the lake and found out we needed to remove about 90,000 cubic yards of sediment. At the time, the discussion was we can't afford to do that and Aldrich Lake and pave any roads. So we made the hard decision of picking one. We picked Aldrich at the time. We did that. We dredged it. We did some improvements to it. Looks beautiful. It's really been a very, very nice improvement for that area. Excuse me. As far as Lake Louise, we are currently participating in a project to remove and replace the bridge and dam. So we are currently funded at about $750,000, I believe, to join the county on that replacement. And then we're proposing to install a small fishing dock. We're going to improve and put a sidewalk along the west side of Lanes Pond Road to allow fishermen to fish from the sidewalk off the fence and into the lake. They'll have direct lake access basically for the entire length. And we're also looking to do some minor improvements around the area for walkways and just access. As far as dredging, we have not revisited the dredging since, I want to say 2017, when we last estimated the cost on that.
So, I really was so happy that, Aldrich Lake turned out so beautiful. And since there's $4 million in the Open Space Trust Fund, I'm just wondering if the council can revisit dredging Lake Louise, since the improvement to the bridge, and you're going to build a dam there, I believe, also, right? And I don't know if the property can be purchased that is near there could be made into a park, a little park area.
We already are working on that.
Yeah, so if you're doing all of that, I'm just saying that if you dredge the lake, then people can put their boats in the lake, and they can't do that now. So, and people live around the lake, and they would
So-
like to see that too.
So just to give you a perspective, cost estimates versus actual construction, we originally estimated Aldrich Lake to come in around 3 million, came in just over 2 million. So we did that work. However, that was almost half of the cubic yardage that Lake Louise needs. So it would be a good rough estimate to say that it would cost probably 3.5 million to 4 million to dredge Lake Louise alone, on top of all the rest of the improvements. So that's a decision the council has to weigh when you're considering replacing playgrounds, rehabbing existing fields that need it, or dredging the lake. So I'm not saying it can't be done, I'm just saying we have to look and make hard decisions about real costs.
So maybe it can't be done this year or next year even, but even if you have like a plan that maybe in 2 years or 3 years we can do dredge Lake Louise, something like that, like a long-range plan. I just think it's a beautiful lake and it's large and people could make use of it and they can't right now. The only use that it gets is fishing. And
Jim-
that's,
I'm sorry. Please.
I'm done. I'm done with Lake Louise. I have one more thing.
Then I just have, Jim, are there ever grants for that?
Yes and no. It's the same grants that we're applying for right now for other projects. There's not really dedicated grants for that are going to be anywhere near sizable enough to generate the effort it's going to take just to go after the grant to then get the grant when we're talking a $3.5 to $4 million project. That's just reality.
Okay.
Okay, and one more thing I just want to bring up that Joan touched on were the warehouses. I live off of Maxim Southern Road, and around the corner now, less than a mile from where I live, there's a application before the zoning board for four warehouses to be built. And it's in a split zone, which is part of it's an ARE 6 zone, and part of it's the SED zone. So I don't know how that happens. I don't know much about zoning and how it becomes a split zone. However, all the surrounding area are farms, horse farms. We have alpaca farms. We have goats. It's farm country. It's rural, except for the SED zone, which United Foods is there, and so I just really concerned about. I heard that the applicant has an online business. We haven't heard from the traffic engineer yet to what's coming and going. But the only way in and out of that area is Oak Glen Road. If you go out and you make a left, it's Oak Glen Road, 547. And if you make a right, it's going to be Maxim Southern and Oak Glen Road. And Maxim Southern and Oak Glen Road is a very dangerous intersection, and there have been fatalities there. So it's really important to take a real good look at these SED zones and what's going on with these warehouses. Thank you.
Hi, Crystal Dias, 15 Menden Drive in Howell. I just had two questions, actually. So, Deputy Mayor, you had mentioned about having a meeting using the tree funds for the hazardous trees. Can the Shade Tree Commission be part of that meeting?
I believe, I'm not asking for a meeting for myself or the council. I'm asking for administration. As you know, Mr. Geegan makes the decisions, how the money is spent, obviously, and what those monies are spent for. I'm asking Mr. Herman to speak to Mr. Geegan and devise some kind of a plan to allocate money, perhaps on a 2 to 3 year plan, to remove these dangerous trees.
We have 9 very concerned people on the Shade Tree Commission who would like to be part of that discussion, though, because we are the advisory commission, and we'd like to be a part of that, if possible.
Absolutely. After they come up with some kind of parameters, then I'll ask Mr. Geegan to, reach out to Shade Tree and, bring the committee in for review, for their input.
Okay, because there are grants out there as well, so we'd also be interested in exploring some grants as well, rather than just
Yes.
going right into the trust fund.
Of course, the issue for the shade tree, for removal in our town is we don't have the equipment for the very large trees, and that would have to go out to a professional tree service. And whatever grants are out there, I've asked Mr. Egan and Mr. Herman to search them out for whatever monies are available. And that's exactly why we were looking to revisit the financial end of the tree fund as well, to bring that up to speed so that more monies are going into the Shade Tree Foundation, or fund, and that we have more resources at our disposal.
Right, we've been working very hard at the ordinance, actually trying to see the verbiage and find out what are some of those loopholes and try to fill those in. The other concern that I had was also county roads and the county parks, the hazardous trees in there. Do we have any thoughts on getting a liaison with the freeholders, so we have, or a liaison with county, so that when we have these concerns, we can have somebody go speak for us?
Well, actually, when something happens on a county road, we can call the manager and ask him to reach out and something specific, to reach out and to talk to the county or to whomever owns that road. If it's a state road, it's DOT, obviously,
Right.
county roads. But the shared service that we'd had, and I was very happy that I was able to pull that shared service together for around the reservoir, because as the county was trimming their trees, they're already there with their equipment and their men, so then they were doing the other side of the road, which was ours. So yes, every time, I've asked Mr. Herman, keep your ear close whenever they're doing something in the Howell Township area, anytime that we can, partner with them. It's always a good thing because, as you know, tree trimming and removal, very expensive.
I just thought in the past, we've had a liaison between county and
We did.
council.
There was a
Right.
liaison. It was Councilman Walsh.
And we have no plans on doing that again?
Well, I was told that the position was made for Councilman Walsh.
I'll be honest, I feel very fortunate that I can pick up the phone and call any one of the freeholders at any time, and speak with them. I mean, they're very,
The reservoir, because of all the storm damage, all the trees around the reservoir, there's been a lot of damage done, and that needs to be cleared so that we can reforest, but we don't have the power of doing that because it's not township-owned.
correct.
So we
And-
need help with the county. We need
Well,
county.
especially with the cemetery that was there. I made a phone call to the county and said, the cemetery's in bad shape. And I think it was within 2 weeks, they actually went in, cut the trees out, cleaned it up. So, I'm thankful that we have that kind of a relationship with the county. And I think we work hard on keeping a relationship open with them so that when we need to pick up the telephone and speak to somebody, they pick up their phone.
Would you be willing to make the call soon on the reservoir?
Absolutely.
Be willing to help, I just didn't want to overstep my.
No. I'll email tonight and call in the morning.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, I wish we had the power to just, to make it all happen.
No, I've been through, I talked to Paul all the time on DPW, and he's like, well, I
Yeah.
can't do that because it's
Correct,
county-owned,
yeah.
and it's a shame every time I drive past that. I'm like, you know what, if I had a truck, I'd go there and start collecting all the dead trees, but unfortunately I don't.
And I know the county has a lot of territory they also cover, and parks and whatnot. I understand, they're limited resources, limited manpower, and, I understand all of that. But when it came to the cemetery, because of the historical value as well, within a couple of weeks, they were in there. It was, I called and thanked them. Because people were calling administration, saying, you should fix this. Well, we can't because we don't own it, but county did do it pretty quickly. I was happy, but I'll certainly reach out to them tonight and tomorrow morning.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your support. Also, I was happy to hear you guys talk about the ordinance today, the tree ordinance, because that's something that we've been concerned about even before we had the reorg meeting. And we've been looking into the verbiage and things like that, because there's so many, like I said, so many loopholes that need to be closed up.
Absolutely.
So it's great to have your support on that.
Of course.
That's an easy fix.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to come up? No, I'm closing this section of the meeting. Okay. Resolutions.
I'll make a motion for Resolution 9A1 through 9A10, picking up 9A14
Okay,
17.
and inclusive of 9A17.
We including the motions as well?
What their appointments?
The appointments?
I think you have to say them separately.
Yeah, Joe, do we have to do those separately, the motions?
Yes.
For the appointments, we do?
The motion has to be said.
Yeah, we may as well, just for the sake of neatness, I mean, it's not going to take us that much longer, so let's just.
I only
keep
ask
them
because
out.
they're asterisk,
Yeah.
that's all.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I will second those motions to move those consent agenda items.
Resolutions, yes?
Resolutions, yeah, sorry.
I'm sorry. Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Motions. May I have a motion?
May I like to make a
Appoint
motion
Municipal
not,
Green?
I'm sorry.
No, I just
No.
read the motion. That's all.
I'd like to make a motion to move 9B1 through 9B4.
No, I believe they have to be done.
Oh, yeah.
individually.
9B1 and 9B2 have to be done separately.
They
We can
need to be
move
done individually.
the other two together.
So 9B1 and 9B2.
Yes. And do you have a name for 9B1, Councilman?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a name for 9B1 that you'd like to insert?
For the Green Team, Elaine Taylor. I thought that was on here.
And I'll second that motion.
Sorry. Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. 9B2.
May I like to
Motion
make
to appoint Municipal Alliance.
Yeah, this is all not in my packet here. I'd like to make a motion to appoint Richard, this is a tough last name,
David Bodge?
Ninavaji,
And I
to
will
the Municipal One-Year Term Alliance.
Second that.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Renewal of secondhand dealer license.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2020 renewal of the secondhand dealer license, KDC Jewelry.
I'll second it.
Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Renewal of secondhand dealer license.
Make the you'll get it.
I'll make a motion to approve the secondhand dealer license for the Jewelry Link.
I'll second.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. And I'm just going to say again that the ordinances are being tabled.
Mayor, if we could have a motion and a second?
Oh, I'm
and
so
And
sorry.
a vote?
For the ordinances?
Yes.
To table.
To table.
Table them?
Motion to
11
table,
point-
correct.
Yeah, I'll make a,
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to table 11.1, 11.2, Mayor.
I'll second.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes. Is there any unfinished business? Our meeting dates will be Tuesday, February 4th at 6:30 PM, and the regular session at 7:30 PM. At
I'd
this
like
time-
to make a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
She's gonna say.
Second.
Roll call, Mr. Bonovich?
Yes.
Ms. Richmond?
Yes.
Mr. Russo?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor O'Donnell?
Yes.
Mayor Berger?
Yes.